The people who stay poor and the people who become wealthy read the exact same books, watch the exact same content, and hear the exact same advice. The difference was never information. It was who they were willing to stop being. And almost no one is willing to find out who that person is, because the version of you that stays safe has spent your entire life convincing you it's the only version worth protecting. You were taught a version of financial safety that was never designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you manageable. Study hard, get the job, keep your head down, and stability will find you. Nobody tells you that stability and wealth are not the same reward. One keeps you comfortable, the other keeps you free. You've been optimizing for the wrong outcome for so long that the wrong outcome started to feel like wisdom, and you did it perfectly. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed that people resist change not because the old way serves them, but because the old way is familiar, and familiarity feels safer than truth. That single idea explains more about class stagnation than any economics textbook ever will. You don't need a better plan. You need to stop protecting a plan that was built to keep you exactly where you are, comfortable enough to never ask why you haven't moved. I have spent years going through the financial histories of people who crossed from middle class into real wealth, searching for the moment it actually happened. It was never a windfall. It was never a lucky break, a rich relative, a stock tip at the right time. In almost every case, there was one ordinary Tuesday where they made a decision that felt reckless to everyone around them and correct to no one but themselves. Everyone in their life had an opinion about that decision. Almost none of those opinions turned out to matter, and most of the people who gave them stayed exactly where they were standing when they gave it. That gap between what looked reckless from the outside and what turned out to be correct on the inside is where this entire video lives. 6 patterns sit inside that gap. You will recognize yourself in more than one of them, and that recognition is the actual point. The first pattern is the comfort ceiling. Somewhere early, you learned that ambition beyond a certain point invites risk, judgment, or exposure. So your mind quietly capped what enough looks like: a livable salary, a manageable mortgage, a retirement date decades away that feels responsible to plan for and comfortable to stop thinking about. That ceiling doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask permission. It just filters every decision before you're even aware a decision was made. The cost isn't the money you don't earn. It's the ideas you don't pursue, the offers you don't make, the version of your career you quietly talked yourself out of, because some part of you decided it wasn't for someone like you. The wealthy don't have a higher comfort ceiling. They stop treating comfort as the goal in the first place. Once you notice where your ceiling actually sits, you start asking an uncomfortable question: who built it? And why did you ever agree it was yours? The second pattern is the discipline mask. You call it being responsible, paying every bill early, avoiding debt entirely, keeping a cushion that never moves, never grows, never gets touched, sitting there as proof that you're careful with money. Some of that is genuine discipline. But underneath it, much of it is armor, worn so long you've forgotten you put it on. Proof to yourself that you're not reckless, not naive, not one of those people who lose everything chasing more. The hidden cost is that caution, worn long enough, stops being a strategy and becomes a face you can't take off in front of anyone, including yourself. The wealthy take calculated risk not because they're braver than you. They simply never needed the mask to feel like a good person. Your caution isn't protecting your future, it's protecting a performance. And you have to ask yourself who you've been performing it for. The third pattern is the borrowed mirror. Every financial decision you make passes through a filter built from other people's eyes. What family expects, what colleagues would think if they knew, what the group chat would say if you actually did it. The career pivot you didn't make, the investment that sounded risky only because someone who's never taken a real risk in their life called it that. You've been living inside someone else's definition of a good decision and paying for it with your own future. The wealthy remove that mirror almost entirely, not out of arrogance, but because they understand something most people never let themselves believe. Growth and approval rarely live in the same room. Ask yourself, honestly, how many of your financial choices were made for your future, and how many were made for people who won't even remember the conversation next year. Here is the part most people avoid looking at directly, because it's easier to feel responsible than to feel exposed. You've assumed that staying cautious protects you from loss. It doesn't. It guarantees a slower, quieter loss you've simply agreed not to notice. The loss of decades of compounding, of the version of your life that required one uncomfortable decision you kept postponing, until postponing became the decision. That safety was never free. It has been charging you the entire time in a currency you weren't watching. You just never asked to see the bill because some part of you already suspected you couldn't afford it. The fourth pattern is the motion trap. You feel busy, informed, active, reading the right accounts, tracking the right headlines, nodding along to the right advice like it's already changing something. Machiavelli warned that the appearance of understanding can be more dangerous than ignorance itself, because it stops the search for real understanding before it ever begins. Motion feels like progress. It rarely is. The wealthy don't consume more information than you do. They act on less of it faster, while you're still confirming you've read enough to be sure. Stop asking what you know. Start asking what you've actually staked something on. And once you stop mistaking motion for progress, the next question becomes unavoidable. What exactly have you been trading for your money, and who decided that trade was fair? The fifth pattern is the time trade. You've been taught to trade time for money in fixed, predictable units, because unpredictability feels unsafe and predictability feels like maturity. But wealth is never built on fixed trades. It's built on leveraged ones, money working somewhere you're not, without your hours physically attached to it. Your income has a ceiling exactly as high as your available hours, and no amount of effort raises that ceiling. You will run out of hours long before you run out of ambition. And somewhere right now, the version of you that hasn't figured that out yet is still trading hours for a ceiling nobody's raising. The sixth pattern is the quiet contract. Somewhere early, without ever signing anything, you agreed to stay legible, to not embarrass anyone, to not overreach, to remain exactly recognizable to everyone who's ever known you, so no one ever has to ask who you're becoming. Machiavelli believed that a person who cannot separate who they are from what they've always done will never seize the moment that requires them to become someone new. This contract isn't financial, it's psychological, and it renews itself automatically every single year, unless you're the one who finally sits down and reads the fine print. Most people never do. They renew it out of habit, the same way they renewed it last year, and the year before that, and somewhere in that repetition, they stopped noticing there was ever a choice to sign it at all. If you take one thing from everything you've just heard, let it be this. The plan that made you feel safe is the same plan keeping you exactly where you are. You don't need a bigger income to change your trajectory. You need to stop financing an identity that was built for staying, not for leaving. Sit with that for a moment, because most people won't. Comment the word ceiling if you recognize yourself somewhere in this, and I'll know exactly which video to send you next, the one that shows precisely how the comfort you've spent your whole life protecting quietly became the cage you're now trying to escape. You are not undisciplined. You are not behind. You were handed a definition of success measured in stability, when the entire game was always measured in leverage. The moment you see that difference, you stop being someone who manages money, and you become someone who moves it. That is the only escape that has ever existed, and it was never about how much you earned. It was about which version of yourself you were finally willing to stop protecting.